Go ahead and hit record. And Brian, take it away.
Oh, sorry, I think my feed froze right there. All right, everybody, I'm still Brian. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen right now. So hopefully you see the PowerPoint pop up in just a second. There we go. All right, so already established that I'm from the University of Michigan. For those of you who maybe haven't been up to Ann Arbor before, I know Lindsay said she's been here a few times. Michigan, of course, is the state that's shaped like a hand, and Ann Arbor is kind of right here. One thing you'll notice when you come to Michigan is everyone from Michigan tells you where they're from by pointing at it on their hand. I thought it was really strange coming from Ohio, but after a couple months, you get pretty used to it, you start doing it yourself. Now, Ann Arbor is consistently rated as being one of the best college towns in America and the best college sports town in the United States. And we've won some pretty great rankings, being best places to live, best places to work, some of the best coffee in America too, which comes in very handy during final exam season. But one thing you may not know about Ann Arbor, and that's very important if you maybe haven't had as much luck in high school, is that Ann Arbor is also one of the best cities in the country for dating. So if you haven't had any luck yet, that could change if you come to Michigan, but we make no promises about that whatsoever. It's entirely on you. Now, what makes Michigan special, what makes Ann Arbor special is all of our students. We draw students from every county in the state of Michigan, every state in the United States, and more than 100 countries from around the world. So one thing you'll realize when you come to campus is, yeah, you'll be around a lot of Michiganders, but you're also going to be able to interact with a variety of students whose backgrounds and experiences differ pretty widely from your own. And that's one of those things that makes college such a rich and rewarding experience. Now, when you apply to Michigan, you don't actually apply to the University of Michigan. You instead apply directly to one of our schools and colleges. Now, the university as a whole is made up of 19 different schools and colleges. Of those 19, 14 are open to our undergraduate students, but of those 14, only 7 accept first-year applicants. I'll talk more about those 7 in just a second. Now, across the entire university, all 14 undergraduate programs, we offer over 280 different degrees. Of those 280, 70% are ranked in the top 10 of their fields nationally, and 90% are ranked in the top 20. We like to say that that means that no matter what it is you end up studying at Michigan, you'll be studying with the leaders and the best in your particular area of interest. Get it? Leaders and best? I see one smile. It's a bad joke, guys. They're all bad. Just be prepared. Now, we are an admittedly large public institution. We have about 30,000 undergraduate students, but our student faculty ratio is only 15-1, and a full 84% of our courses do have fewer than 50 students in them. If you happen to end up in a larger class, it'll likely be an introductory course during your first year on campus, but you're still going to have smaller discussion sections wherein you and about 25 to 30 of your classmates will sit down with your instructor throughout the week and throughout the semester to make sure that you are keeping up with the material that you're covering in that particular class. And to further help you make that jump from high school to college, we also limit our first year math and foreign language courses to 18 students as well, because we understand that in those subjects in particular, there can be a pretty big jump from high school rigor to college rigor. So we want you to make that jump in a smaller environment. Now, one of the great things about college and about Michigan is all the ways you can personalize your experience outside of the classroom. One of the first ways you'll do that at the University of Michigan is through research, because you can see on the screen, we are the #1 public research institution in the US. And last year, before the pandemic, Michigan had about $1.6 billion in funding for research projects across the university. And the great thing about research at Michigan is it's not limited to just graduate students and professors. It's something you all can get involved in as early as your first year on campus, largely through our undergraduate research opportunity program, otherwise known as UROP. Now, again, pre-pandemic, last year was a little strange. UROP took in about 1,300 students from our first and second year student populations and placed them with 800 faculty members to work on topics that span the academic spectrum. So if you are someone who wants that more traditional research experience where you're wearing a lab coat and looking through microscopes all the time, you can definitely do that. But if you're someone who's also interested in, say, the humanities and the social sciences, there's plenty of opportunities for you to get involved in research with that as well. Now, another great way to personalize your experience outside the classroom is going to be through student organizations. And at Michigan, we have over 1,600 registered with the university. These, of course, include your more common organizations like professional and social business fraternities and sororities, athletic clubs and sports teams, and so on and so forth. But they also include a lot of wackier organizations. Like at Michigan, we have a squirrel feeding club and an anti-squirrel feeding club. We have not one, not two, but three different stand-up comedy clubs and our own comedy showcase in downtown Ann Arbor. So if you want to become a stand-up comedian, be the next Trevor Noah, you could potentially do that as a student at the University of Michigan. But my personal favorite club to talk about is the fact that Michigan has an actual real-life ice carving team. So if you have ever wanted to take a chainsaw or a flamethrower to a block of ice, you can literally do that as a student at the University of Michigan, but just please be careful while you're doing that. I did mention sports, so we should go ahead and talk about that too. You can probably tell from my background that I'm a big hockey fan here at Michigan, and this year is going to be our year, knock on wood. Potentially going to have 6 first-round draft picks. I'm very excited, but that's neither here nor there. Across the university, though, we do have about 30 different Division I sports teams that compete nationally. Students have scholarships, go play professionally. And across those teams, we've won over 50 national titles in 12 different sports. Actually, need to amend that. That's now 13 because women's gymnastics won their first ever national championship. Was that 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? Time is blurring together, but they won a national championship very recently. We're all very excited about that as well. Now, jumping back into academics, I did mention that we have 7 first-year programs at the University of Michigan, and those are the 7 that you see here on the screen. So these are the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts, the College of Engineering, the School of Nursing, School of Kinesiology, School of Art and Design, School of Music, Theater, and Dance, and the College of Architecture. When you apply to Michigan, you have to apply directly to one of these 7 programs. And I'll tell you all a little bit about each one of these right now. If you have more specific questions, I'm happy to go into that a little bit later on in the Q&A. But we'll go ahead and start first by talking about the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts. Now, literature, science, and the arts sounds very broad, right? And that's because this is our liberal arts program at Michigan. And it's designed to give you the critical reading, writing, and thinking skills that you need to be successful in a wide variety of careers after you graduate from Michigan. And to help prepare you for that wide variety of careers, LSA offers over 85 different majors and more than 100 different minors. These range from African studies to anthropology to biology, chemistry, neuroscience, political science, sociology, so on and so forth, right? Pretty much everything under the sun you can study as a student in the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts. And 85 majors sounds like a lot, right? Like, how do you choose which one you want to do when you're a freshman application? And the nice thing is you don't have to. When you apply to LSA, we consider you only for admission to the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts as a whole, not to any one major in it. If you know which major you want to do, that's great. It's going to make writing your essays a whole lot easier, but we don't hold you to that as part of the application process. I know David mentioned an interest in pre-health at the University of Michigan. So we don't have a pre-med major, but we do have pre-health advisors. So those are the people who work with you as early as day 1, your first year on campus, to help you get ready for medical school in the future. I know it might sound odd to not have a pre-med major, but Michigan students who apply to medical school are accepted at a rate that's 15 points higher than the national average. So we still do a very good job of getting you ready for that in the future. Now, the next largest college at Michigan is the College of Engineering. Engineering offers 17 different majors, and just like LSA, when you apply, you don't apply to a major. You apply to the college as a whole, and then as an engineering student, you have until your sophomore year to figure out which one of those majors you want to do. Now, your first year in engineering is going to consist of a bunch of foundational courses in calculus, chemistry, and physics to make sure that you have the necessary academic background to succeed as an engineering student. Then you'll be able to specialize more as you go through your career. Now, if you are in engineering, but you have other interests outside the college itself, that's okay, because all engineering students are required to do at least 15 credits outside the college. So you're still going to have a chance to explore your academic interests during your time at Michigan. Now, the next 2 programs are nursing and kinesiology. And these are considered our demonstrated interest programs at Michigan. So what that means is when you apply, in addition to your application, we also look to see that you have demonstrated interest or experience in the field. And the reason for that is the academic programs in nursing and kinesiology. The courses you take are very program specific and likely will not transfer to another school or college at Michigan if you change your mind and transfer out later on in your career. So before we admit you to nursing or kinesiology, we want to see that you have some type of experience with the field. So if you're applying to nursing, that experience could be anything from maybe knowing nurses in your personal life, maybe you've shadowed at a hospital, you've volunteered with your local Red Cross, just any type of experience with the field of nursing. And similarly for kinesiology, that experience could be anything from writing a sports column for your high school paper, maybe you've played high school sports, maybe you know someone who works for the Detroit Lions, just any type of experience with the field is what we're looking for those 2 schools. Now, the last 3 are talent-based programs. These are art and design, music, theater, and dance, and architecture. And by talent base, I don't mean that the rest of you are not talented, just that these are artistic programs and there's an artistic supplement for the application. So if you apply to the School of Art and Design, you have to submit an artistic profile or portfolio, excuse me. If you apply to the College of Architecture, you have to submit an architecture portfolio. And if you apply to the School of Music, Theater, and Dance, you have to submit an artistic profile. The distinction is for art and design, the portfolio needs to include at least 12 to 15 pieces of your best and most recent works of art, as well as a recommendation from your art teacher. For architecture, that portfolio consists of a design assignment you can find on their website, as well as about 10 to 15 pieces of your architecture background. And that can be anything from ceramics to pottery. Maybe you have experience working with 3D printers, just some kind of experience with the field of architecture. And for the School of Music, Theater, and Dance, the portfolio or profile rather will include a recommendation from your art teacher, a resume showcasing your experiences as a performing artist, as well as any pre-screening materials that may be required for the major itself. So if you're applying to major in dance in the School of Music, Theater, and Dance, you'll need to submit a recording of one of your past dance recitals. And that was a very quick overview of 7 large programs in Michigan. So again, if you have specific questions, happy to answer those a little bit later on. But next, I want to talk briefly about our upper level programs. So I mentioned at the beginning that we have 14 programs open to undergraduate students, only 7 accept first years. So the other 7, or 7.5, counting the College of Architecture, are considered upper level programs at Michigan. So what that means is they accept students at either the sophomore level or at the junior level. So if you know you want to enter these programs, not something you necessarily need to apply for as a first year applicant, just know that you will need to apply for them a little bit later on. Now, the programs highlighted in maize here on the screen are a little bit different because they have a preferred admissions option. So what that means is as you're going through the application, after you choose your first year program, you'll notice that there's a little box underneath asking if you want to be considered for preferred admission. If you check yes, you can then choose one of these 5 programs. What happens at that point is when you submit your application, we'll review you for admission to your first year program at Michigan. And if you are admitted, we'll then send your application over to the upper level program that you specified. Their admissions office will then take a look and decide whether or not to admit you to their preferred admissions program. And if they do admit you, that's great, because it means as early as year 1, you're going to have access to some of the same academic and advising resources that full-time students in that program have. But you are not guaranteed admission into the program. You will still need to apply formally later on in your academic career. Now, the exception to this is the Ross School of Business, because their preferred admissions process works a little bit differently. So for those of you interested in Ross, you will still choose a first year program. You'll still choose that preferred admissions box. Then you'll select the Ross School of Business. At that point, you'll be prompted to complete the Ross portfolio, which is 2 additional business related essays that only Ross is going to have access to. When you submit your application, my office will review you for admission to your first year program. If you are admitted, we'll then send your application over to the Ross School of Business. They will do their own independent review of your application and your portfolio and determine whether or not to admit you to their program. If you are admitted, then you are guaranteed a spot in the Ross School of Business, and you would start during your sophomore year. However, if you applied to Ross through the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts, and you are admitted to both Ross and to LSA, we actually take you out of LSA, and you would only be a Ross student during year 1 on campus. Whereas if you applied to, say, engineering in Ross, and you're admitted to both programs, your first year, you'd be both an engineering student and a Ross student. And at the end of that first year, you could decide to either stay in Ross, stay in engineering, or do both programs simultaneously. Do know that we will never limit the number of programs you're pursuing at the University of Michigan, because you are free to explore all of your academic interests during your time on campus. Now, if you have any specific questions about the Ross portfolio, I do encourage you to check out Ross's website. They do a lot of virtual admissions presentations as well. And they'll be able to answer more of those technical questions that I won't be able to as it relates to Ross. So all of that, right? Now let's talk briefly about how you apply to the University of Michigan. So the first thing you should know is our application isn't open quite yet. It opens in about 5 weeks, which seems like the summer is flying by right now. But the Michigan application will open on August 1st. We accept both the common application or the coalition application. We have no preference between the two, so please use whichever one you're more comfortable with or whichever one you think is easier. They both ask for the same information, just in a slightly different order. So again, either one of those is fine. Now, we have made some changes due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Probably the biggest one is that our staff is still partly remote. So we are doing limited on-campus events at this time, but if you can't make it up to campus, that's okay. We don't track visits to campus for admissions purposes. We never have. So if you come to campus, it's a great way to explore Michigan and figure out if Ann Arbor is a place that you would enjoy living in for 4 years. but it is by no means required for your chances to be admitted to the university. Now, application-wise, the biggest change is that Michigan is test flexible. And what test flexible means is if you have taken the ACT or the SAT, we encourage you to send your test scores to us. Now, if you haven't been able to take the test, or you did take the test, but your score wasn't what you think it could be because the pandemic impacted a lot of students' abilities to study for it and take prep programs, that's okay. You can apply without a test score, and you will still be considered for admission to the University of Michigan. You will not be disadvantaged in the process in any way for not having a test score at all. You're also able to self-report your test scores this year, which was new for us last year. And if you choose to self-report your score, you don't need to send us your official score report until next summer. And we receive. Now, there's no admissions benefit to applying for early action. It doesn't make you more likely to be admitted, but it does mean that you get your decision much sooner than the alternative. And it also gives us the opportunity to ask you for more information. So one of the possibilities about applying for early action is that you would be postponed into regular decision, which means that we liked your application, but we do want some more information from you before we make a final decision. So we will ask you for your first semester grades from senior year. If you apply for regular decision, we guarantee you a decision sometime in mid to late April. Now, to dive briefly into the nuts and bolts of the application process, at Michigan, we use a holistic review process where multiple people will look at your application before a decision is rendered. What we're really looking for here is to find students who have maximized their opportunities in high school. And we look at six key criteria. The first three are going to be more academic related, and the last three are going to be more qualitative. Now, academics, though, are the foundation of our review, so we'll talk about those first. You can see them on the screen here already, but the first thing we're going to look at is your GPA. And as you can see, the average GPA for an admitted student last year was about a 3.9, technically about a 3.923, but it's neither here nor there. Now, the caveat here is that we have no minimum GPA requirement at Michigan, and this is also an unweighted GPA on a 4.0 scale. So when you apply, when all 80,000 students apply, we actually go through your transcripts and look at every grade you got from 9th to 11th. If we see an A+, A or an A- becomes a 4, B+, B or a B- becomes a 3, and so on and so forth. And the simple reason that we do that is because high schools around the country use an incredible number of different grading scales, and this is the only way we can make sure we're looking at everyone on the same playing field. But we also look behind your GPA to see what it can tell us about you as a student. And one of the things we look for is a grade trend. And an example of a positive grade trend could be a student who maybe, struggled in 9th grade because middle school was really easy and you thought you wouldn't have to study in high school. And then all of a sudden you get a couple C's and a D. It happens, right? But by 10th grade, you figured out what this thing called studying is. By 11th grade, you're taking advanced classes and getting mostly A's. Like if that's you, you're not going to have a 3.9, but you still could be a very competitive applicant to the University of Michigan. We also look at the types of classes that you've taken as well. So we require all students to have a minimum of 16 core academics by the time you graduate high school, though most competitive students will have 20 or more. We define a core academic as math, science, social studies, humanities, foreign language, or English. So you need to take 4 to 5 of those a year. We also want to see that you're challenging the curriculum available to you as a high school student. So if your school offers you AP, IB, or honors courses, we expect you to take those. But we by no means expect you to take all of them, right? We want you to challenge yourself in your areas of academic interest, but it's also important that you have a life outside the classroom too. Now, there are some required classes that you need to have for Michigan. Excuse me. So most importantly, everybody, no matter what it is that you want to study in college, needs to have 4 full years of English at the high school level. If you're applying to the College of Engineering, you need 4 years of math and science, and that needs to include calculus, chemistry, and physics. If you're applying to LSA, you need 4 years of English, 3 to 4 years each of math and science, and 2 years of a foreign language. Now, I won't spend too much time on test scores. We've already talked about those a bit. Just do know that the scores you see here on the screen are not minimums. They're just the middle 50th percentile from last year. So on the qualitative side of things, we're going to look at, again, 3 key factors. The first of which is your extracurricular involvement. Now, we're not looking for any particular type of involvement, right? If you do community service, if you play sports, if you work a part-time job, if you care for family members, all of those things are great. We just want you to tell us about them and really use this as an opportunity to brag about what you've achieved in high school. So if you've won any awards or held any leadership positions, definitely make sure to tell us about that, right? Like we want to know about these things that you've achieved as a high school student, because that helps us visualize what you're going to achieve on campus at the University of Michigan. Now for recommendations, this is going to kind of sound like a trick question, but we really do only require one letter of recommendation. It's not one of those things where we require one, but we want three. We really do only want the one. And the reason for that is letters of recommendation can be very repetitive. So if you submit 5 letters of recommendation and teacher A says you're great, teacher B says you're great, teacher C says you're great, teacher D says you're great, and teacher E says you're great, that's great, but we didn't really learn anything new from those letters of recommendation. So if you want to submit more than one, you certainly can, but we ask that any additional recommenders be able to tell us something new and something substantial about you that we wouldn't otherwise know from the rest of your application. Now, we encourage this recommendation to be from someone who's taught you in a core academic class within the last 2 years. But, if you're more comfortable having somebody else like a coach, a mentor, a boss, a teacher from 9th grade write your letter of recommendation, that's absolutely okay too. It's entirely up to you. We don't make your high school counselor submit a letter of recommendation for you, but if they want to, they certainly can. We will make your counselor, though, submit what's called a school report, which just helps us identify students who are taking advantage of those high school opportunities, because it tells us about the curriculum offered at your school, grades at your school, test scores at your school, and so on and so forth. And the last thing you have to do, and I'll make this quick because I know I'm running out of time here, is write a couple essays. And the first one is going to be for the common application or the coalition application. The important thing there is that you get to choose your own prompt, so there is no way for you to get that wrong. Just focus on telling a short, contained story about yourself, and make sure that you keep this essay generic because it's going to be read by every school that you apply to. Now at Michigan, I'm the admissions counselor for Central and Southern Ohio, and I quite frequently see a lot of students writing about other schools in that particular essay, and then I wonder, why they're applying to Michigan, right? So make sure that you save your school-specific thing for your school-specific essays. Now for Michigan, there are two Michigan-specific essays that you have to write. The first is going to be the community essay. And here we want you to tell us about a community you consider yourself a part of, what role that community has played in shaping you as a person, and how that will in turn shape the University of Michigan. And this community is really up to you to define, right? If you want to write about your family, if you want to write about your friends, if you want to write about the cul-de-sac that you grew up on, if you wanted to write about your Fortnite squad, like all of those could be great community essays. Now, the point of these for us is to get to know you as a student and as a person, because at Michigan, we don't offer interviews. So these essays really are the best way for us to get to know you and to get to know why you want to come to Michigan. Which brings me to our next essay, which is, why do you want to come to Michigan, right? So if you want to go into medical school, you want to do pre-med as an undergraduate student, you can do that at pretty much any institution in the United States. So why do you want to come to Michigan? Are there classes we have that you want to take? Are there professors we have that you want to work with? Is there research you're doing on campus that you would like to be involved in? Tell us about the things unique to Michigan that have made you want to become a Michigan Wolverine. And finally, there is the optional COVID-19 impact essay. This is entirely optional. If you don't want to write it, you don't have to. But if there's anything you want us to know about your application, whether it be your academics, your involvement, just your personal life that has been impacted by the pandemic, this is the place for you to tell us about that. But again, it's not required if you don't want to write about it. So with that, I already talked about the timeline, so I'll just go housing when I have time for. The admissions resources, so we do have a lot of online events if you'd like to participate, including live Q&As with members of our admissions team. You can also find your specific admissions counselors too at the link here on the screen. But with that, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Lily and Ethan.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian. That was really informative. I am going to add so many moving pieces. Okay, I'm going to add Lily and Ethan so we can hear from both of them. Wonderful. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ethan again. I'm going to be a senior studying history and minoring in history of art. When I got to Michigan, I started in the residential college, which is a living learning community. There are many of those on campus. One example is the honors program. And a living learning community is just a group of students and faculty who live together. Well, not the faculty, but the students live together, and they're working towards a common goal or shared interest with several faculty members. So for me, being in the residential college or the RC, it's largely focused on foreign language study. So I lived in East Quad for 2 years, my freshman and sophomore year, and I took intensive Spanish classes with residential college professors, and many of the students in my classes were students I was living with. So I finished that intensive language requirement, but I'm still taking classes through the RC, and some of my closest friends I met through the RC. In terms of my involvement with Jewish life on campus, my freshman year, I started going to Shabbats at Hillel with Jewish first years I met through the RC, and it became a routine, and it was a great way for me to connect with these students in the residential college and to meet other Jewish students. I also participated in a few Hillel seminar classes directed at undergrad Jewish students, including the Jewish Learning Fellowship, which was led by Haley and our rabbi, Rav Lisa. I also took a cooking class taught by our rabbi, and it's just been a great way to connect with other students and get a break from homework during the week. For why I chose Michigan, I was looking at small liberal arts colleges like Macalester, Kenyon, or Brandeis. And I had really only applied to Michigan because it was close to home. But when I heard about the residential college and these other living learning communities, I realized I wanted to do that because I could make U of M feel smaller than it was. And some advice I got early on in my application process that I think was really valuable was that you can make a big school feel small, but you can't make a small school feel big. So, by pursuing the residential college and other extracurricular groups like Hillel, I would be able to make the school feel smaller, and I developed a lot of personal relationships with others, while also knowing I could take advantage of Michigan's size, like through its alumni connections when I graduate. Something I really like at Michigan is how big the Judaic Studies program is, because there's so many great classes and so many great professors. And that's probably the biggest reason why I chose to be a history major, because there's a lot of overlap between those two departments. And I took a couple classes through Judaic Studies, and I really loved them. I would say if there's one thing I wanted to change about Michigan, it would be that the classes are really big to start. Even though like junior and senior year, the classes do get smaller, but freshman and sophomore, usually introductory classes are quite big. And I like smaller classes because I like to get to know my professors and my students in a smaller group environment. I'll pass it on to Lily now.
Hey guys, I'm Lily. I said this earlier, but I'll say it again. I'm going to be a rising junior. I'm studying public policy. So it was one of those like programs that he mentioned earlier where I applied as a sophomore. And so it's like, I'm going to study it for 2 years as part of like a smaller program. I'm also from Florida. So like I get the whole, I think most of you said you were from like colder places, but anyone else like is scared about the cold, it's really not that. I'm from Florida and I do it. It's good. So I guess I'll start with like why I chose Michigan. I was looking at like a lot of different schools. I knew I didn't want to be in Florida, so that was like first thing. And I also like didn't really know what I wanted to study. So the great thing about Michigan is you can literally study anything. And at some schools, I felt like it was like, oh, if I'm not going to study business or if I'm not going to want to be a doctor, like there's no point in going to that school. Like I feel like at Michigan, everything is, this sounds bad, but everything's worth studying. And like every program is really good. Every class you can take is like really good. And so if there's like a lot of flexibility, like I didn't even know what I was going to study until my sophomore year, which is like scary, but also like amazing because I was able to take so many different classes and like learn so many different things and see what I didn't like. And I was like really drawn to the big Jewish community. It's like a really big, there's like a really big Jewish community here. It definitely makes the school feel really small. even though the Jewish community is like really big and diverse, I like go to Hillel like pretty much like every Friday for dinner and like all other different programs. And there's like always people I know. It feels like very small and like just and help make the school a lot smaller. As a freshman and sophomore, I was also in the honors program. So there's an when you apply to school, like when I applied to LSA and I also applied to the honors program. Basically, it's kind of like what Ethan was saying about the residential college, just like a little different. Like basically, most honor students live in South Quad, which is like a really good dorm to live in, and you get like slightly better advising, and you take like a few honors classes, and the classes are smaller. You kind of know a lot of people in your classes because most of them like live on your hall or live near you. And it's mostly just like a really good way to get like better advising early on at Michigan because it is like such a big school. What else? I would say that so I'm studying public policy. I said that already. Some like advice for freshmen would definitely be just to like try everything out at Michigan because like there are so many different things you can do. Like join a lot of different clubs. Like there's so many different things. I write for the newspaper. I'm like a sports writer for the newspaper, so I really found like a small community there. I came from a small high school, so I was like concerned about going to such a big school. But like once you meet a few people in class and then like join a few clubs, like it's really not big at all. Definitely like the Jewish life is a really big thing for me here. It's a really great community. There's something for everyone, whether you just want to go to like one Shabbat dinner like once a year to like meet people and then make those friends and never come back, or like go every week and participate. There's like a lot of different like social programs, education programs. I've done like a lot of them. It's really great. I'm also involved in Greek life, which is a really great thing if you're interested in it to be a part of. It's a large part of the campus, but also not at all. So if you're interested in that, it's a really fun, just like group of people to be around. If you're not interested in it, then like also there's other ways of like having social events and doing other things. Something I would change maybe about Michigan is kind of like what Ethan said. The classes are a little big, but one of the really good things I like is like for every big class, if you have a smaller discussion section and you really get like personalized attention. And I think in the admissions presentation, they said like it's like 25 to 30 people. Like most of my discussion sections have always been like 15 people, and like you're with a graduate student. So like it's a little more like easy to understand and personable. And even like on Zoom this year, they were like really great. And yes, Ann Arbor is like a huge draw for Michigan. It's a great place to be. I'm here this summer just because like it's a really fun place to be. That was also one of the reasons I chose to come to Michigan, because it's I didn't want to be in a city because I like small towns, but there's always something to do here. You're not like too far from anything. You can always like walk to get food, walk to the like convenience store, walk anywhere. Another big thing is like the campus. Even though it's a really big school, the campus is like really self-contained. So everyone kind of like self-contained. So you're never like too far from anything, which sounds weird because it's a big school, but like you're never like really too far from anything. Yeah, and I think that's probably all from me. If anyone has any questions.
Great. And like I said, yeah, if you have questions, send them to Ariella. I'm going to turn these over to Haley for a few minutes to talk to us about Hillel at Michigan. And thank you so much, Lily and Ethan.
Hi, everyone, again. As I said, I'm Haley. I am the Director of Engagement at Michigan Hillel. I've been here, I'm going into my 5th year at Hillel. But also, as I said, I went to Michigan for college and grad school, so I've been around a while. So I'll just hit on some main points about Jewish life at Michigan and where Hillel fits into that, because I want to leave time for questions, because that's where probably the bulk of what you may be interested in about Jewish life on campus will come from. So obviously we're a Jewish organization, so we support religious life on campus. We have the Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox services and community building experiences planned by and for student leaders in each of those communities. So anything from Shabbat to holidays, learning, etc., all happened through Hillel. Even throughout the pandemic, that has continued in combinations of virtual and in-person opportunities. We're also a full service organization for all the holidays in general, especially in next year. Labor Day is Erev Rosh Hashanah, so it's really early in the year. So we'll be providing services, meals, programs to meet the needs of the students, regardless of where they affiliate. But beyond just religious life, we also have an abundance of opportunity to be involved. So Lily mentioned this a little bit, but we have a bunch of different student groups. I always like to say that whatever you might want to do in college, you can probably do through Hillel. And if we don't already have it, we'll help create it with you. But some examples of groups that we already have are a Holocaust awareness group. We have a group called Hire Akeem, which is like environmental justice and sustainability. We also have a hockey team, and like our hockey team is very good. They regularly beat the Ross School of Business hockey team. We have an outdoor adventure group. We have an a cappella group, as well as a variety of different Israel groups that focus on advocacy, dialogue, and education. There's also a lot of opportunities to become a student leader. I personally remember being in college and wanting resume building experience and wanting things that I could be really involved in. So Hillel offers a lot of different opportunities, whether or not it's being a leader of one of those groups, whether or not it's taking a class like the Jewish Learning Fellowship, like actually both Ethan and Lily did with me in different semesters, or leading the Jewish Learning Fellowship with Ethan then did in a later semester. So those are all opportunities to get leadership experience and to add those to your resumes, as well as we have a pretty extensive engagement fellowship program that Lily did also. That's primarily sophomore year. That's a really great way to connect to your community and get some really cool development and experience under your belt. Shabbat is also one of the biggest programs that we do at our Hillel. Prior to COVID, we probably had anywhere from 200 to 250 people at any given Shabbat dinner. The first and second Shabbat dinners of the school year had closer to 600 people, and then it steadies out around 200 to 250 throughout the year. We also have a program called Host at Home, where we actually support students in hosting Shabbat dinner in their own homes, and we reimburse them for those meals. During the pandemic, we transitioned to entirely host at home, as well as to-go and catering options. So we actually still maintained those numbers of about 200 to 250 people each week, but it was through primarily host at home, to-go Shabbat meals, and catering, which we offered. Freshman year specifically, we have a lot of programming for students through our group called FISH, the First Year Students of Hillel, which includes our early move-in retreat experience, which this year had 80 spots and filled up in the first hour and a half of the registration being open. So if you're interested in doing our freshman retreat, if you come to Michigan, check your email really quick when we send that information out, because an hour and a half into it, all 80 spots were filled. So that's a really great opportunity to sort of jumpstart your Jewish experiences on campus. But even beyond that, for people who don't do that or don't get a spot on it, we have FISH events all throughout Welcome Week for incoming students. We have an opportunity to sign up for a mentor, a sophomore mentor, as well as plenty of opportunities throughout the entire freshman year for freshmen to build communities with others. I think I'll leave it there, because I think anything else people might be curious about, I can address with questions, but.
Great. Thank you, Haley. I'm going to, if you all want to go back to gallery view to be able to see everyone, that's always a nice thing. Now this is one of my favorite times of these information sessions is a chance for you all to ask questions. Again, it's nice that we are a small group, so you know there are no dumb questions. This is, and whatever you ask, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, this will not be held against you when you apply. So this is a safe space, and you are with some very wise people. Yeah, Lindsay.
I was just going to ask, I was private chatting Lily about this, but I'm considering applying to the honors college. I believe it's like, I think you have to apply after you get in. But is there any way that, Brian, if maybe you could tell me a little bit about like that application process, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about it. So you're applying to LSA, correct?
Yes,
Yep.
because
So
I'm like
all,
undecided.
oh, sorry. Yeah. All admitted LSA students receive an invitation to apply to the honors program. Typically goes out sometime in February, but as students are admitted throughout the year, they keep sending out reminders. So everyone is eligible to apply. And that's about all I can tell you because the honors program handles it separately from our office. So I think Ethan and Lily, you both said you were in honors, correct? If you want to talk more about the process from what you remember.
I'm not in honors. I'm in the residential college.
Oh, RC, sorry.
But Lily.
Yeah, so I was in honors, and yeah, so I got into Michigan and then I applied to the honors program. I'm pretty sure it was just one additional essay, and then they let you know like shortly after that whether you got in or not. Like I said, like the best part about honors was like at freshman orientation and like throughout like my first 2 years, like I had a advisor who just like had a lot less students than like a general like I don't know biology advisor or something like that. So it was like really easy to make appointments with him. That was really great. And then living in South was really good because all the dorms were really good, but like it was just nice to be in South Quad like with other people who were like also in my classes. And it's also like not like a huge thing. Like the honors program, you really only take like 1 or 2 classes per semester. So like one of the main requirements is taking the freshman writing requirement, and that's like through the honors college, which my writing class was like really interesting. I actually took it as a sophomore, but it was good. But yeah, I definitely recommend applying to honors.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, David. Yep.
Does Michigan have an intramural wrestling team?
I don't know. That's a great question. I know, Ethan, you do some intramural sports, but not wrestling.
I did basketball. I wouldn't be surprised if they had wrestling. I don't know. I'm not sure.
We definitely have a varsity wrestling team. Intramural, though, I don't believe so. There might be a club wrestling team. I'll look it up and then I'll send it in the chat if I find it.
All right, thank you.
I think there's definitely a club wrestling team. Or like also it's just easy to find people who like would want to wrestle, and like then there you go.
Great. I've also heard from a lot of schools that like if there's something not there, you can like make it. So I don't know if it's like that in Michigan, but David, maybe you could start that. Great. Any other questions? Let's see. A question that I've heard a lot is for Ethan and Lily. What's the food like in the dining hall?
It's really good. I like it a lot. There's always like they're really big, so there's like always a ton of options. I don't know if anyone's kosher, but there's like in one of the dining halls they have kosher options, and like anyone can eat it. It's really good. But there's always like room to be healthy, room to not be healthy, room to like get anything. I really liked it. And there's like a bunch of them like everywhere, so it's like you're never too far.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's pretty good food, or at least compared to other college food. Like my brothers went to schools on the East Coast, and their food was like terrible compared to what Michigan offers. So
great. And then I know we have some people from warmer climates. Lily, you talked a little bit about that, but would mind sharing like just how, how it's totally fine to get through the winter and it's, if you want to elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, it's definitely like a big thing. Like obviously I'm from Florida. I never like lived in the snow, but all you really need is like a big coat and some boots and like some layers and you're really okay. You're never like gonna need to walk too far, like from where you're living to class or from class to class. Like everything's like maybe you'll be outside for 10-15 minutes. Also, like there's only a handful of days a year where it's like really, really gross. And like it's not that bad. Like this year I went like sledding a bunch with my friends. Like everyone like makes it a fun time. Another good thing about like going to a big school is like even if it's like snowing and gross out, like there's still a ton of people there and like the energy is like still really high. So it's like really fun time, even in the winter.
Great. I think we have time for one or two more questions. Okay, well, I'm going to send, for everyone's on, I'm going to send you all the emails of all of our presenters today. So if you have any follow-up questions or something you think about like later while you're eating dinner, you can follow up with Brian and Haley and Lily and Ethan. Again, I want to thank you all for joining today. If you can take a few minutes to fill out this survey, I would really, really appreciate it. I will also include it in the follow-up email, but if you could fill out that survey, that would be wonderful. Again, if this is for me, this is the last college road trip session I'm running. So if this is your last stop, thank you again for joining us. And thank you to our presenters, Go Blue. And I hope you all have a wonderful summer. Bye.
Thanks so much, all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.